Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Dragonlance Media. Now this video isn't necessarily going to be a book review, although I will have one of those coming out maybe today or in the near future. But today I wanted to talk about how I got into fantasy literature and fantasy novels. It's a fun topic for me to talk about actually, because I've enjoyed fantasy books really the whole genre of fantasy since I was about 10 years old, and I can pinpoint it to exactly one book that was given to me on my 10th birthday. So I'm not going to do any preamble here. We're just going to get straight into another episode of So I remember my 10th birthday very, very well, because it was when my mother got me this book, Phantoms of Fear, book 28 in the Fighting Fantasy series. Now, for those of you that don't know what Fighting Fantasy is or have never heard of them, they were a series of game books that were first published. I believe the first one was the Warlock of Firetop Mountain, that was published in 1982, and they went through to the early 90s. Now, Fighting Fantasy are basically solo role-playing game books, very much like a choose-your-own-adventure. You have a character sheet. You have 3 attributes: skill, stamina, and luck. Maybe some of the books you have magic as well, things like that. And you basically just read the passages, read the paragraphs, and turn to whatever paragraph number you have to go to. And this was my first one. My mother also got me, or my parents, I should say, got me some dice. They use a 6-sided dice. And just looking, I mean, look at that cover. That cover is just fantastic. And then some great art inside the book itself. Just really, really beautiful stuff. And I absolutely fell in love with Fighting Fantasy, to the point where I actually collected a lot of the books themselves, and then saved up my pocket money and picked up, well, I had the original version of this. This is a reprint, Out of the Pit. This just details all the monsters, gives all their statistics and things like that you find in the game books. All the art is from the game books themselves. We had Titan, the Fighting Fantasy World, which has kind of maps in it and descriptions of the races, wood elves, lizard people, all of the evil guys that you find in all of the books, things like that. Absolutely love this book. They also made a role-playing game, Advanced Fighting Fantasy. Really a basic toned down kind of Dungeons and Dragons, but using the Fighting Fantasy mechanics with skill, stamina, and luck and magic. Now, the reason I want to bring this up today, the reason why these books really were such a huge part of my childhood, was because it is almost my birthday coming up, and on my 30th birthday, so basically in 2008, we in fact had my mother's funeral. She passed away, and her funeral was held on my 30th birthday. Now, after the funeral, I was walking around Katoomba with a very, very good friend of mine, and we passed a secondhand bookstore called Mr. Pickwick's. And this book was in the window. And this isn't my original copy. This is one that I picked up, along with Trial of Champions, and Legend of the Shadow Warriors, and I just had to buy it, and I have kept it with me ever since, and I've played it quite a bit. Trial of Champions was probably my favorite one growing up. You basically start off being captured by slavers and taken to an island where you have to run a gauntlet of various tasks, gladiatorial battles, and the whole purpose is the leader of the island, that dude there, his brother has a dungeon called Death Trap Dungeon, which was actually book 6. And if anyone survives Death Trap Dungeon, they'll win 20,000 gold. So you have been chosen to go into the newest incarnation of Death Trap Dungeon and see if you could win. This is actually book 2 in a trilogy. It was very rare that they did this. They continued a story, but the first one was Death Trap Dungeon. Then you had Trial of Champions, and then you had, I believe it was called Army of the Dead. I might be mistaken, but your character from this that won all the money builds their own army, and then you have a new mechanic in that game book where you are fighting battles with soldiers and things like that, and it's just really, really great. There were 50 of these. It was originally going to stop at 50, but they did print about 8 more after that. There are reprints available. There are video games. But if you are looking for something, if you have kids and you want to get them kind of into fantasy and decision-making and dice rolling and things like that, these are fantastic. If you're an adult and you just want something fucking great to play, these are also fantastic. You can get most of them on Amazon or eBay. People probably selling complete collections of these. Highly, highly, highly recommend. Fighting fantasy got me into the fantasy genre. But what made me stick around? I actually have my brother to thank for that. My brother found a book 1 in a series, and he read it. He said I should read it, which I did. And that book was Dragons of Autumn Twilight, book 1 in the Dragonlance Chronicles. I have the collector's edition here, brand new purchase, I might add, just because I really wanted to read it again, and I don't have my copies of the single novels. Dragonlance Chronicles were a series of books that came out basically a little bit after a series of Dungeons and Dragons modules, which followed the story of the War of the Lance. The characters in these books, you could actually play them as pre-generated characters in the Dungeons and Dragons module. I believe there were 12 or 14 in the entire series that spanned the whole War of the Lance. And yeah, these books, by today's standards, people might say they're poorly written. They're very generic, you know, the heroes all start in a tavern, just like every fucking Dungeons and Dragons adventure ever. You have the ranger, the cleric, the wizard, the fighter, the thief, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's true. That's fine. These characters are so fucking memorable. And the story that spans these 3 books, Dragons of Autumn Twilight, Dragons of Winter Night, Dragons of Spring Dawning, is just phenomenal. I mean, this trilogy, these stories have stuck with me over all these years. I will never forget, like, the ups and downs of these characters. I've read these books so many times. I plan on reading them again. It's just fantastic when you like cheer at the highs and you get depressed at the lows, at character deaths and things like that. It's just really, really great. But Dragonlance Chronicles, don't stop there. Dragonlance Legends, Time of the Twins, Test of the Twins, War of the Twins, then Test of the Twins. Basically, the twin brothers Caraman and Raistlin are the focal points of this trilogy, although some of the other characters from the Chronicles do make an appearance. Again, my brother found this collector's edition in, of all places, Color Code bookstore in Penrith. Another fantastic trilogy, and if you are going to pursue them, please read them, Chronicles and then Legends. There are a ton of Dragonlance books out there. These are the ones I would recommend. The stories continue in other books, the Second Generation, the War of Souls series, and so on. But these 6 books are the ones that should really get you started. Again, if you have kids or relatives that you want to get them into fantasy and things like Lord of the Rings is a little too heavy, go with the Dragonlance Chronicles. You cannot go wrong. I just wanted to take this time to show you some of the books that got me into fantasy. Of course, I do read many other genres of book for many, many different reasons, but my 2 great passions when it comes to literature are always going to be fantasy and horror, which I will be talking about a little bit in the next video. So hopefully this has given you a little bit of an insight as to where I come from when I read books and when I do these reviews and things like that. Also when I write as well. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. Thank you very much for watching. Please follow us on Redbubble, Amazon, YouTube. Click the subscribe button to become a Plaguelandian. And read a fucking book, people.